Drive, drive, drive! Oh, right.
Hey guys, what's up? If you're new here, my name is Brooke and I enjoy researching strange occurrences, true crime, conspiracy theories, and sharing them with you. If you're not new here, then you already know the drill. Let's get right into it. To set a little scene in the background of today's case, let us take a journey in our minds to Ocean County, New Jersey. Unless, of course, you live there, in which case I am so sorry. Located on the southern central coast of the state, Ocean County comprises nearly 40 miles of beach that attract plenty of summer vacationers each year. Thanks to the pop culture of the early 2010s, even if you've never actually been there, you can probably remember the infamous cast of Jersey Shore shaking things up on the boardwalk of Seaside Heights.
Where's the bitch?
Right there. Where else would it be?
Despite the county's rapidly growing population, proximity to Philadelphia and New York City, as well as being a popular tourist destination, home to beautiful beachfront communities and amusement parks, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. And it all started over 70 years ago. Directly on the coast within the wetlands of Barnegat Bay, New Jersey, lies a mid-sized township by the name of Toms River. Prior to 1952, Toms River had a weak economy due to the fact that it wasn't really known for anything. On the upside, it had been considered one of the safest places to live in America, but that, unfortunately, meant that many of its residents were commuters who traveled to New York City for work, since the town itself really wasn't known for any notable industries that could have an influence on cash flow. That is, until a Swiss company called Ciba-Geigy Chemical Corporation relocated their operations to the Toms River chemical plant in 1952. The company was a merger of two of the most successful Swiss leaders in the chemical and pharmaceutical industries due to their revolutionary dyeing processes created after World War II. Initially, the citizens of Toms River were ecstatic to learn about this new prospect for their hometown and all of the well-paying jobs that it could create. It seemed like a saving grace, and for the next 40 years, this new location would serve in manufacturing industrial pigments, dyes, plastics, and resins. The production of chemicals within the factory actually created more waste than usable product, so naturally, it needed somewhere to go. The Environmental Protection Agency requires that industrial manufacturers dispose of hazardous waste either in a landfill or an incinerator that is properly equipped to handle said chemicals by processing and neutralizing them so they're not just hanging out and being reactive and therefore dangerous to the public. Seems like a pretty vital aspect that is, or at least should be, the main focus when it comes to the operations of these facilities. And while I'm sure you can see where this is going, they were not the first company in Toms River to contaminate natural resources. The year is 1971, and Mr. and Mrs. Reich, owner of a 3-acre plot of land directly on top of the city's aquifer and only a few hundred feet away from a residential area, agreed to lease it to an independent waste hauler by the name of Nicholas Furnicola. They were under the impression that he would be using the land as temporary storage for some 55-gallon drums, nothing too crazy. But after only 5 months of this leasing agreement, they were horrified to go check out the property and discover nearly 5,000 dumped waste barrels belonging to Union Carbide, a chemical manufacturing company in Toms River. After investigation by state agencies, it was found that about 450 of the drums containing tar, resin, and solvent had been dumped into trenches, which then contaminated the soil and groundwater. Union Carbide claimed that they had paid Nicholas Furnicola to store the barrels and that they had accidentally leaked. After a visit to the New Jersey Superior Court in 1972, the company was ordered to cease all dumping immediately and to remove the drums, contaminated soil, and waste. Thankfully, EPA oversaw all of the cleanup since Union Carbide clearly wasn't to be trusted, but that didn't stop the Environmental Protection Agency from placing it on the Superfund's National Priorities list in 1983. Superfund is an act passed by Congress that forces companies responsible for toxic contamination to either clean it up themselves or pay the EPA to do it. Around this same time, Ciba-Geigy had been up and running for a few years, and things seemed seemed to be going really well for the economy. But after a while, a few things started to occur in Toms River that raised red flags. After a long day of strenuous labor, factory workers would come home to their families covered in sweat that was the same color of the dye that they worked with. During summer break, kids swam in the river that was changing the color of their bathing suits after just one afternoon. They began noticing that the fish living in those waters had developed physical deformities like sores, and sadly, the fish weren't the only ones suffering. By 1982, so many of the local children had been diagnosed with cancer that their families began requesting that it be investigated by the proper health authorities. Time and time again, these requests were denied up until 1983, when it was found that 87 kids had been diagnosed between 1979 and 1995 with leukemia often found in girls. Many who didn't succumb to the illness or to the treatment suffered from stunted growth, shortened life expectancies, physical deformities, along with the effects of chemotherapy. Some examples include Michael Gillick, who at only 3 months old was diagnosed with cancer of the nervous system called neuroblastoma. Now at 43 years old, Michael has lost partial use of his vision and hearing, as well as developed a large tumor near his spine, but thankfully lives a relatively happy life according to his mother. And at only 6 months old, Lauren Cotran was diagnosed with the same form of cancer, which led to temporary paralysis from the waist down. In March of 1995, State and Health Chief Cancer Cluster Investigator Michael Berry was called to assess the damage and possibly find a solution. He had conducted a study previously in 1986 that ended up unfruitful, and it wasn't far into this more recent research that he ran into several of the same issues. The first big one was that the state cancer registry was 3 years out of date, so there wasn't really any recent data to study. Secondly, people were calling in to report all types of cancer, and since so many of them had so little in common, he couldn't find a strong enough correlation to determine if the environment was really the cause. And last, but certainly not least, the general public seemed to have an underestimation of just how common cancer is in the population to begin with. Once rumors spread, regardless of what the cause was, tourists had no desire to visit Toms River or the surrounding areas, which was a major hit to their already uncertain economy. As he struggled to piece this strange omen together, he couldn't answer the public's questions either. At this point, his job description was basically to reassure everyone that they were completely safe, even though he had zero evidence to back up those claims. When he attempted to report the few findings that he did get to the New Jersey Health Department, they never followed up with additional testing. He himself even admitted that the investigation was a waste because he was unable to provide the answers that were being demanded from him. The townspeople were understandably worried about this cluster that seemed to be appearing. They tried chalking it up to chance because many things do happen in pairs or flocks, but that didn't keep them from anxiously waiting for officials to identify what the cause actually was. It was discovered that the residents of Toms River had been ingesting the chemicals trichloroethylene, styrene acrylonitrile trimer, epichlorohydrin, and naphthalene, all of which are known or suspected to cause cancer. With these results, Toms River was officially declared a Superfund site for its second time in 1996. Thanks to the carelessness of these two environmentally unfriendly companies, Toms River would eventually lose its recognition as the 1998 Little League World Series champion and become known as the town where an abnormal amount of children were dying from rare forms of cancer. Around the same time, a pediatric nurse named Lisa Bornazian began to notice a pattern in her patients at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Many children who were being treated at the hospital weren't Philly natives, but travelers from Toms River. Even though it was a hot spot for cancer, the town's small community hospital did not have the resources to treat the cancer. So once Lisa noticed this influx of Toms River residents needing cancer treatment, she felt a strong need to bring this to the attention of her superiors. Unfortunately, she was brushed off a lot, but luckily her sister-in-law had connections that urged the New Jersey Department of Health to investigate further. Plus, a citizens committee demanded that action be taken. Finally, the state health department took action and over the next year made several startling discoveries. Cases of central nervous system and brain cancer in Toms River were 3 times higher than the state average. Ciba-Geigy Chemical Corporation was flushing their waste products, i.e. hazardous chemicals, into the Toms River and thereby into the Atlantic Ocean. They'd also buried about 47,000 drums of toxic waste near a chicken farm, which, as you can guess, is pretty bad news for people who eat chicken and eggs. Radiation was emitting from the town's well water, but the health department determined that it was a problem across the state and not just in Toms River, which I hope they also looked into that because that just does not sound healthy. Honestly, at this point, if you live in New Jersey, maybe you should just get out now before you start looking like... High levels of lead in a carcinogenic chemical byproduct of plastic manufacturing were also reported in the water of residential areas, but the Health Department and Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry claimed that these contaminants were not the cause of this cancer spike. Despite a study showing that mothers of children who developed leukemia were found to have consumed more tap water during their pregnancies than those who didn't, authorities still denied that there was a correlation. Although state authorities tried their hardest to deny the damning evidence that in part made them look bad for not enforcing environmental protection laws, consequences were not avoided. Ciba-Geigy paid approximately $300 million plus fines and penalties, $64 million in settling criminal charges for illegally disposing of hazardous waste, and $13 million between 69 families who fell victims to the effects of this poison. Additionally, the land was taken over by the German-owned chemical company BASF in 2009. Since then, the new owner has been attempting to undo the reprehensible acts of greed committed against the planet, and as of 2023, they finalized a settlement that will allow them to retain the land so long as they pay $500,000 to the state and continue to clean up the 1,550 acres of contamination. The cleanup must be carried out under the supervision of the EPA and includes treating millions of gallons of water and nearly 500,000 cubic yards of soil per day. The company has also implemented restoration projects such as parks, solar panels, and an environmental education center to attract both locals and tourists alike. Their overall goal is to restore the land and water so that the public can use it safely. I personally think it's an interesting choice to jump straight into building an environmental education center for the public, as if this entire cancer epidemic wasn't caused by something completely out of the public's control, namely the actions of the greedy, selfish companies. But of course it doesn't hurt to educate people, but most of them are living the horrible effects of this reality. Unsurprisingly, the public was not pleased with the outcome of the settlement. Most believe that the land will never be suitable for recreation again, as they've been given hope to believe. The health department claims that the water is supposedly now safe to drink, but many will only consume bottled water, and I can't say I blame them. Some won't even drive through the area with their windows down out of fear for what they could possibly be inhaling. Mayor Maurice Hill Jr., along with local environmental organizations, have stated that this settlement doesn't even begin to come close to repairing the town or compensating the victims of their environmental catastrophe, largely because the community was given no say in the consequences. It's no wonder that the citizens have so little faith in the government or these industrial companies when their illegal dumping was able to go unchecked for so long. And while Toms River did take the brunt of all of it, this settlement really seemed to focus too much on this relatively small area rather than other areas of the state, water sources, the ocean, everything else. Some genuinely believe that there is no external influence causing this particular cancer cluster and that it's just a coincidence. Others think that there may be an alternate explanation, such as the side effects of certain medications or occupational exposures. The groundwater contamination of Toms River has thankfully been reduced by 40% in the last decade and continues to decrease over time. But unfortunately, that is not the happy ending we're probably all hoping for. Just 50 miles north of Toms River in Woodbridge, New Jersey, lies Colonia High School, where 100 of 15,000 graduates and faculty members have been diagnosed with rare yet aggressive brain tumors in the last 30 years. Professionals have been brought in to analyze the possibility possible cause, and environmental scientists found that the dust inside the building and the dirt on the campus grounds contained cancer-causing polychlorinate biphenyls, which may be the result of atomic bomb development during World War II. Still, some health professionals claim that there is not enough evidence to call the school a cancer cluster. As if parents don't have enough to worry about these days when sending their kids to school, many of these Woodbridge parents have had to transfer their kids to new schools and continue fighting for extensive testing on what their children may have unknowingly been exposed to. Just out of curiosity, I went to the EPA's website where they conveniently have this fun little tool where you can locate your nearest Superfund site, and I was quite surprised to discover that there are 4 in my county, so, crossing my fingers that I don't grow an extra limb. In all seriousness, it really irritates me when people even litter the tiniest bit of paper, so if you want to know how this makes me feel, it's not very good. I don't know if these companies just aren't concerned about their future children not having a planet to live on because they're just raking in the cash right now and don't really care what happens in the future, or what, but I'm really not down with all of that. How would all the people responsible for this waste dumping like it if I just walked up in their house and
Poison the water hole!
Anywho, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this case, and let me know if you like these types of videos or if you find true crime more interesting. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!